planet faces a catastrophe if action to tackle climate change isn't agreed upon at the UN talks in December. Well, that is the warning from the Prime Minister, who today suggested we'd pay a heavy price for failure. So how urgent is the threat? Is a catastrophe inevitable now, or are concerns being exaggerated? Well, let's talk to John Ackers, who's from Campaign Against Climate Change. He joins us live from central London. And in the studios, Piers Corbyn from Weather Action. Very good afternoon to you both. Piers first, exaggerated or urgent?
Completely exaggerated and not at all urgent. In fact, the only thing under threat of catastrophe is the climate hysteria bandwagon. The science shows, and we have a conference in Imperial College on the 28th of this month which will discuss it, the science shows that carbon dioxide does not drive temperatures, and in fact world temperatures have been declining for the last 7 years while carbon dioxide has gone up. And neither does carbon dioxide drive storms, and there's been no increase in landfalling storms hitting the USA, for example, in the last 100 years.
All right, the counter-argument, John Ackers?
Well, the claims are not exaggerated at all. We are taking it right up to the wire. We've got to take action right now. When we talk about the scientists, the vast majority of scientists in the world, those people that have contributed reports to the International Panel on Climate Change, are in complete agreement that the situation is very serious and we have to take action today. I don't know what scientists that Piers is talking about, but I assume that's a very small group of maverick scientists, and that doesn't represent the bulk, the consensus of scientific opinion.
Piers, I'll let you come back on that in a second, but John,
sure.
You used the words taking it right up to the wire. How do you know that? How do you know we are? Because we know that we are approaching tipping points, and once we get into a situation where one of those tipping points kicks in, we can't reverse out of that situation. That's why we have to take action to make sure that we don't approach one of these tipping points, like, for example, the Arctic ice completely disappearing, Amazonian rainforest disappearing later on. Those situations are completely non-reversible, and that's why we can't even contemplate getting close to those tipping points. All right, Piers, I mean, tipping points, the Arctic ice, I mean, we had the Maldives government, didn't we, underwater this week, giving their, having a conference. I mean, the Maldives is losing land to waters rising.
It's spin and nonsense.
Are you saying the Maldives isn't losing land?
Spin and nonsense. As was shown by Charles Darwin years ago, the tropical islands like the Maldives, they change their level according to sea level. They are not under threat. The only thing that's under threat there is the funding from the UN for that government, and the only thing under threat around the West is the climate change bandwagon. I challenge Mr. Ackers to come to our conference with credible scientific evidence which shows that carbon dioxide drives climate presently, or in the last 100 years, or 1,000 years, or 100,000 years. There is no evidence. I challenge him or anyone he can find to produce it. The fact is that climate extremes as well are not caused by CO2, but we can predict them, and indeed the storm heading for Britain now was predicted by us 100 days ago.
I'm sure you'd like to present that evidence now, Mr. Ackers.
Well, I'm not a climate scientist and probably won't be at Piers' conference, but
Bring somebody, send somebody else. Send a scientist. We want a scientist there. We are scientists. We want one. From your camp, please, if you've got something to say, come and say it.
But Piers, you're working outside the majority of scientists, including scientists in the UK.
Well, not entirely. I'm working with scientists who are not on the gravy train, that's true.
But Piers, you have to acknowledge that the bulk of opinion among scientists now is that climate change is...
No, I don't acknowledge that. Not actual scientists. There's plenty of people on the bandwagon, like Mr. Ackers, who are not scientists, who are making money out of this hysteria. But actual scientists who know the evidence and see it for themselves, the answer, I think, is no.
All right.
But let's have a debate. Let them come along, send them along to our conference. Wednesday, October the 28th, Imperial College. Come on to weatheraction.com and read all about it.
All right, Mr. Ackers.
If that were true, there would be some kind of campaigning organisation putting Piers' views forward. All we have is a disparate group of individuals have different views on climate change. If they got together and formed one organisation and that had some credible
message, then I'm sure that other people would listen to them. But the fact is that there is no organisation like that in the UK.
Mr. Ackers, governments around the world are listening, obviously. I mean, the Copenhagen Agreement coming in December is what Gordon Brown has been talking about today, which is why we're talking about it now. He says we've got 50 days to save the world. That's how long before the conference starts. Are other governments around the world in the UN taking it as seriously as Britain? Is there as much money being pumped in?
Well, I'm not. First of all, I'm going to disagree with you about Britain taking it seriously. Gordon Brown is very good on rhetoric, but in terms of domestic action, he's been very slow. For example, he still thinks that going ahead with Heathrow, extra runway at Heathrow is a good thing. He's on the really key things. He's just backed away from them. So it's good what he's saying, but unfortunately, he wasn't the right person to be delivering that message today. It would have been great if he'd actually done something locally in the UK that people could have looked at and said, yes, he's actually on message on climate change, or at least understands the problem.
Piers, that's an interesting point that John Ackers has made. I mean, do you accept that the Prime Minister is actually doing less than he could be doing, and so therefore he's more or less in support of your cause?
Look, Gordon Brown is a genius on economics and has probably saved the UK economy and led the world to avert a depression, although, the story isn't over yet. However, on this, I think it's unfortunate that he's taking ill advice, and the less he does on climate, the better. What should be done on climate for CO2 is nothing at all. CO2 is a good thing. With more CO2, plants grow faster, and actually the productivity of world crops increases. CO2 is not a danger to climate.
That's
One
absolutely
final
ridiculous.
word, Mr. Ackers.
I'm sorry, arguing that CO2 is good because
Let's have
plants
the facts.
grow.
You come to our conference, give us evidence.
All right.
Have evidence.
Okay.
Well, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. I'm sure both sides will hold conferences, many before the Copenhagen Agreement is reached. John Ackers, thank you for your time campaigning against climate change. Piers Corbyn,
thank you very much.
Thank you both indeed. Let us know what you think. Lots of views coming into us about climate change. What you think? Are we doing enough? Are we doing too much? Is it about taxation, as Piers suggests? Well, let us know. news@sky.com.